Hey everyone, it's Kong, and here's another episode of Should You Summon? As usual, the point of this video is not to give in-depth builds for these characters, but rather high-level overviews to help you decide how to spend your vouchers and crystals. The point is really to help answer that question, should you summon on this banner? I see a lot of players on social media asking, is there anyone good on this banner? Is there anyone that I really shouldn't miss, that I should be pulling for to try to add to my box? I try to answer that question using 4 simple criteria. How they fit into your team, whether they unlock any bonds, what kind of content they get used for, and future availability. Hopefully you can put these 4 key points together to build some context around whether you think that you should summon for these characters or not. Obviously there are some other factors involved, like other banners that are running at the same time, banners that might be coming up in the near future that might be better for you to save your resources for, and also just how many resources you have. It's kind of up to you to apply the information in this video to your own personal context and make the decision for yourself. Hopefully this is helpful. So without further ado, let's jump into this new banner featuring new heroes. We have Mystery Knight from Langrisser 4 and 5, and Virash from Langrisser 5. This banner is running from March 12th to March 25th. And it's worth remembering that as a new character banner, this is not a Destiny banner. So your first SSR pull is not guaranteed to be one of these new characters. It's definitely possible to pull off-banner characters even on your first SSR. The first character we're going to look at is Mystery Knight. She's basically a magical Leon. Her talent gives her increased damage and increased magic defense for each space that she moves before attacking, with a little added mechanic that resets all your cooldowns after you move a certain number of cumulative spaces. So at 6 stars, when you move a total of 20 spaces in the battle, it resets all your cooldowns and then starts that counter over again. So this can be a really neat little perk that requires you to keep track of how much you're moving in order to really fully leverage it. She has 2 class options. She can be a highly mobile, ranged magic DPS with sorceresses, or a highly mobile melee magic DPS with unicorns. So both really good soldier types. She has some other soldiers as well, but I just thought it was worth mentioning these 2 really top-tier soldier options. She usually gets run in her melee class. She's a member of Strategic Masters, buffed by Altamuller and Lanford, and YELESS Legends, buffed by Landius and Sigma. As far as bonds, she actually is responsible for unlocking the defensive bonds for Elucia, who's an upcoming character. She's not in the game yet, but if you plan on summoning and building Elucia, then that might be a consideration for you. You will need Mystery Knight. For herself, she needs Lanford to unlock her defensive bond and Landius to unlock her attack bond. As far as content, as I mentioned earlier, she's basically a magical Leon, and she has the same kinds of strengths that he does in PvE. She has a single target attack that gives self-healing, and she also has some AoE options. So like Leon, she should be good right out of the box for general PvE content. I'm thinking of stuff like story, time rifts, and so on. She's actually a pretty good magical damage option for Strategic Masters teams, because that faction doesn't really have a whole lot of magical options. Her factions make her an interesting pick for the Phoenix battle in Eternal Temple, as well as maybe the Sleipnir and Needhog battles in Ancient Beckoning. In PvP, she's a strong pick for Apex Arena because of her potential as a magic DPS tank buster. She did get used a lot in the last season on the Chinese servers, and that's probably something that we'll see on the global servers as well. She could play a similar role as Yulia, as far as having access to those unicorns and consolidating her damage as magical attacks against tanks. Now, for availability, if our schedule does follow lockstep with the Chinese servers, she should be coming back up again in mid-July with Lanford. One caveat to that, though, is that that was the Valentine's banner in China, so it may or may not show up in midsummer for us. I'm not sure if they delay those kind of romancy Valentine's banners, or if they're just gonna say who cares and give it to us then anyway. The next character we're going to look at is Virash. He's primarily an aquatic unit with a weird talent that lets him live on and continue fighting for a number of turns after dying. The effectiveness of this depends on his star level. He has some general purpose buffing and an interesting suplex skill that moves unguarded opponents behind him after he attacks, so that might be useful for some niche positional cheese strategies. For factions, he's a member of YELESS Legends, buffed by Landius and Sigma, and Meteor Strike, buffed by Zerida. For bonds, he's responsible for unlocking a bond for Brenda, who's another upcoming character. So as I mentioned for Mystery Knight, if Brenda is a character that you have your eye on and you're hoping to summon and build, then you may want to consider trying to get Virash on your team just to unlock that bond. For his own bonds, he needs Lambda to unlock his defensive bond, and Rainforce to unlock his attack bond. So what content does he get used for? I could see him being useful in the Eternal Temple against Scylla, just because he's an on-faction aquatic unit, so he has kind of home turf advantage in that battle. He's also on-faction for Jormungandr and Nidhogg in Ancient Beckoning, but personally I don't see him making much of a dent in those. I'm going to say in PvE he's generally not much of a game changer, but I do want to clarify what I mean when I say that, because I've kind of said this about a few characters in past videos. I don't mean that they're useless characters or that you won't be able to use them in PvE at all. Pretty much any character can be built to have a use in most PvE content. I just mean you're not going to be able to get on his little serpent back and ride through the whole game like you can with some other characters, like Leon for example. He's not necessarily the best at a certain specific thing, but he can still be used for a lot of things. As long as you're building the right team around characters and using their skills in interesting ways, then you can go far in PvE content. There are just some characters that are a lot more map-destroying than others. When Virash was first revealed, there were people who thought he might have a lot of potential in PvP, but I'm not sure if he actually gets used a ton. I could see him maybe getting some use in stalling type teams. He has a lot of passive skills that he can use to buff allies and himself. He gets a self buff from his talent if he's injured, and he also has to be killed several times, which can soak up opponents' actions, but I think as far as that's concerned, it's usually more reliable just to have a good tank to do that. Still, he could be surprising to some opponents. For availability, Virash actually is scheduled to come back in mid-July on a Destiny banner with Omega and Cherie. So if you already have Omega and Cherie, then Virash will be your guaranteed summon on that banner. So just to wrap up, we have Mystery Knight, who's a powerful, mobile magic damage attacker. She's a good overall general purpose unit in PvE, and she's also quite a valued attacker in PvP. And she does unlock a bond for the upcoming character Elucia. Then we have Virash, who's not necessarily a game changer. He does have an interesting self-revive mechanic and some positional cheese potential, and he unlocks a bond for upcoming character Brenda. Once again, I hope this video was helpful. Take the information presented here and combine it with all the other information you have about your own barracks, your own needs, and hopefully that'll help you make a decision. Let me know in the comments how your summoning sessions went. What character were you shooting for, and did you have any success? Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next Should You Summon.